Smoke rises after shelling near Kyiv, Ukraine, March 22, 2022. Reuters. Gladgaranich. Rescuers work at a site of an industrial building damaged by an airstrike in Kyiv, March 22. State Emergency Service of Ukraine via Reuters. Members of the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces check a man as they patrol during a curfew in Kyiv, March 22. Reuters. Gladgaranich. Petrol station worker, Tamara Kravchuk, 37, holds her newborn baby, whose name will be Katya, after a bomb hit a building in the psychiatric hospital, only a few buildings down from the maternity hospital, in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Nacho Dos. Damaged buildings are seen following a military strike in Shevchenkivsky district in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Serhiy Naznenko. A service member of pro-Russian troops in uniform without insignia handles a mortar round at a weapons depot near Marinka, in the Donetsk region, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Members of the Territorial Defense Forces participate in training exercises in Kyiv, March 22. Reuters. Mikhail Polinchak. Sailors attend a memorial and funeral service for first-rank Captain Andrei Pally, Russia's Black Sea Fleet deputy commander, who was killed in the eastern Ukrainian port city of Mariupol, in Sevastopol, Crimea, March 23. Reuters. Alexei Pavlychak. The remains of ammunition lie on the ground at the site of a damaged building hit in a military strike in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Serhiy Naznenko. Women from Kharkiv are reunited with their friend from Chernihiv in Ukraine after fleeing to Romania, at the border crossing in Siret, Romania, March 22. Reuters. Clodagh Kilcoyne. People fleeing their homes due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine shelter at Bronx Fitness Hub Club, in Lviv, Ukraine, March 23. Reuters. Pavlo Palamarchuk. Pictures lie amidst the rubble of former teacher Natalia's house, which was hit in a military strike, in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Serhiy Naznenko. A firefighter works at a residential district that was damaged by shelling in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Marko Urica. Children rest inside an evacuee bus after they fled from Mariupol, in Zaporizhzhia, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Stringer. A firefighter works at a residential district that was damaged by shelling in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Marko Urica. A service member of pro-Russian troops checks weapons inside a building, which according to the military, was previously a fighting position of Ukrainian armed forces, in the town of Marinka, in the Donetsk region of Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Residents prepare sandbags to defend the city, at the coast in Odessa, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Igor Kachenko. A Ukrainian refugee child boards a train bound for Warsaw, at Przemysl Glowny train station, in Poland, March 23. Reuters. Hanna McKay. A woman weaves camouflage nets for the Ukrainian army in Lviv, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Pavlo Palamarchuk. Demonstrators run from stun grenades and gunfire by Russian troops at a protest against the Russian invasion, along Ushalkova Avenue in Kherson, Ukraine, March 21. Via Reuters. Dr. Anatoly Pavlov takes pictures of a damaged psychiatric hospital after it was hit in a military strike in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Nacho Dos. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A worker carries the body of a civilian at a morgue in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Nacho Dos. People inspect a building damaged in a military strike in Kyiv, March 23. Reuters. Serhiy Naznenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A neighbor stands next to the remains of Boris Romanchenko, a 96-year-old Holocaust survivor, who was killed at his apartment during shelling, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, March 22. Reuters. Vitaly Nivi. People attend a military training in Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Yuri Rilchuk. A Ukrainian service member inspects a shell crater in a village on the front line in the East Kyiv region, March 21. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Tetiana Chornoval, former member of the Ukrainian parliament, now a service member and operator of an anti-tank guided missile weapon system, pulls an anti-tank missile out of a car at a position on the front line in the Kyiv region, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Firefighters work at the site of a bombing at a shopping center in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Marko Urika. A charred Russian tank is seen on the front line in the Kyiv region, Ukraine, March 20. Ukrainian ground forces via Reuters. A Ukrainian service member repairs a military vehicle at a position on the front line in the East Kyiv region, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Bogdan, a wounded man who says he was injured from shelling, smokes in front of a hospital in the town of Brovary, near Kyiv, Ukraine, March 19. Reuters. Marko Urika. Olena, the mother of Denis Snihor, 25, a border guard turned soldier, killed by Russian shelling in the northern town of Ovruk, mourns her son during his funeral at the Lyakhiv cemetery, in Lviv, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. Local residents walk near residential buildings which were damaged in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 18. Reuters. Stringer. A shell crater is seen at a residential area in Severodonetsk, Luhansk region, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Alexei Kovalov. Members of the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces Asenia and Roman pose for a picture following their wedding ceremony in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters. Mykola Timchenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A view shows the body of a person killed in the besieged southern port of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. Bodies of unidentified people who were killed and were picked up by a volunteer from Hostomel are pictured at a crematorium in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters. Thomas Peter. A rescuer walks through debris at the site of a bombing at a shopping center in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Marko Urika. A rescuer reacts inside a damaged shopping mall in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 21. State Emergency Service of Ukraine via Reuters. Igor, 5, comforts his mother Helen Yukubets, who cries in a ballroom, which has been converted to a temporary shelter, at the Mandici Hotel after fleeing from Chernihiv in Ukraine to Romania, at the border crossing in Sasieva, Romania, March 20. Her 18-year-old son and husband remain in Ukraine to fight. Reuters. Claude Kilcoyne. Local residents take cover as they hear blasts in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 20. Reuters Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A priest blesses the bodies of unidentified people who were killed at a crematorium in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Thomas Peter. A Ukrainian flag waves in front of a damaged building hit in a military strike in Mykolaiv, Ukraine, March 21st. Reuters Nacho Dos. Internet marketing workers, Miragor Sharipov, 26, and his fiancée Maria Pasternak, 25, who volunteered to join the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces, attend the training session in Odessa, Ukraine, March 18. Reuters Nacho Dos. Alexis Antilla, a member of a group of U.S. volunteer fighters who have taken up arms alongside Ukrainian soldiers, sits in a wheelchair in front of a hospital in the town of Brovary, near Kyiv, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Marco Urica. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. The body of a person killed lies on the ground in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 18th. Reuters Alexander Ermoshenko. Hopscotch squares painted on the ground as a girl rides a kick scooter at an empty Shevchenko Park, in downtown Odessa, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Nacho Dos. A view shows service members of pro-Russian troops and tanks on the outskirts of the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A view shows the body of a person killed in the besieged southern port of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Alexander Ermoshenko. People dig a grave for victims killed in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 20th. Reuters Alexander Ermoshenko. A volunteer knits camouflage nets for Ukraine's armed forces, at a church in Ivano-Frankivsk, Ukraine, March 19th. Reuters Yuri Rilchuk. A rescuer works next to a warehouse of goods damaged by shelling, in Sieverodonetsk, Ukraine, March 21st. State Emergency Service of Ukraine via Reuters. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. Dead bodies lie on the ground at the site of a bombing at a shopping center in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 21st. Reuters Marco Urica. A Ukrainian service member walks in a destroyed village on the front line in the East Kyiv region, Ukraine, March 21st. Reuters Gleb Garanich. A dog walks at the site of a bombing at a shopping center in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 21st. Reuters Thomas Peter.